Dan's not near as chatty as you or I. He's not the person that just hangs out on the phone for a long time. But he was telling me about this experience, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to listen to the whole thing." And he goes through the whole process. This was a client. Yeah.
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Hi, I'm Eric.
Oh my goodness. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Simply It Ain't Easy. This real estate podcast is altogether unique, unconventional, unusual, and seriously, like its host, they just ain't typical. We may not know how you found us, but we are thrilled to have you, and we hope you decide to join our growing community. I'm Eric, she's Donna, and we are the Real Siblings. This podcast blends real estate together with lifestyle as we work to communicate, educate, connect, and entertain our listeners. And for the record, this is our 39th episode, and we are now entering our third calendar year of podcasting or content creation. Woo-hoo. While the topics vary, our conversation go in many directions. We endeavor to provide our listeners with insight into the industry, better equipping them for their next real estate transaction.
Page 2.
Yeah, right. Page 2. Now, I have to say, as I prepared to this, have you ever heard of a falimboslim? I didn't even say that right.
Are you asking me?
Falimboslims? It's where you blend two words together to make a new word.
Well, I've heard.
So I thought it might be clever to say that we work to edutain or possibly entercate.
I'm not sure I like entercate. That sounds more like
right, and that's exactly what I thought. Something
like
about
a surgery.
That
I've had enough surgeries. I don't need to be entercated.
That sounds like that's inappropriate. But if you do it with the C word, then it's communinect or concate.
Oh, good Lord, Eric.
But I'm doing that, and then what else comes to my head? It's like, as Mary Poppins says, maybe that's going a bit too far.
All right. It's only 10:30 in the morning on January 5th. I'm not sure I'm ready for all this.
Yeah, but you look like you're doing pretty good. How's recovery and physical therapy going? For the listeners who know, Donna had a knee replacement in just around Thanksgiving time. And if you're new to the show, that's why I'm asking about what a recovery is.
Yeah, it's good. The first one was 5 years ago. I don't remember how long it took to do anything. I'm a little impatient. I'm a little cold. The electric bills in my house are higher because I'm sitting in my house a lot in our colder months, They tell me I'm doing fine. I did just make some decisions. I think I mentioned to you, I decided not to go to Europe in March because I wasn't sure spending the money and walking around a major city made sense so soon.
Right.
And so changing some plans, but getting there.
So I was just looking off to the side. The whole reason I was looking off to the side was I was checking to see what our temperature was. We are currently 57 degrees. How cold is cold in Tucson right now?
You know what? You were warmer than me. I think it was 39 this morning. Right now it says 44. So on my phone.
Woo!
So
we were 42 when we walked.
Yeah. It's
all right. I guess that's cold. And it's a dry cold. It's not as important that it's a dry cold as it is a dry heat, because most people assume that cold is going to be drier, right? We dry out in winter.
That is true. That is true, Eric. Man. All right. So Santa Claus, you also were sick. You were out entertaining the world throughout the month of, or at least the San Antonio world.
Yes,
throughout the month of December.
As you may suspect, children can carry some things. I'm not blaming anybody.
Well, you couldn't. There's too many.
That plus the combination of my allergies and my single most impactful allergen is in full bloom right now. In Texas, it's tree season and tree pollen. Juniper ash, or mountain cedar as they refer to it here, is the one that triggers me and sets me off. We had a blast about 2 weeks early this year. It set me off. I went to Med Clinic the first time on November 27th. I was back in on December 14th. I've spent about 5 weeks on inhalers, nebulizers, steroids, bronchodilator, everything else to get me through the season.
Not to mention snotty-nosed kids probably, right? Because, right, they're coming from schools and germs and families. And
I did more than one school this year, so I didn't just get them to come visit me. I was in the school petri dish.
All right, so
which is a terrible thing to say.
You all need to know that for whatever reason, Eric and I have run into this thing where we lock up periodically when we're doing this. He manages to edit it out in the video part or in the audio part. But in the video part, you're going to see locked up faces. And we're going to try this from another location later to see what's going on. Yeah, Eric, there's been a couple times I've been like ready to speak and then you're locked. So I haven't spoken. So today, what are we talking about today besides getting over our...
I said that I think we should call this Expect the Unexpected. And I know you had a different thought. What was it that you originally thought we should call this one?
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yes. And what we're relating this to is the fact that both of us have recently gone through, from either a personal standpoint, myself in my own house, Donna with the house that she's working and renovating down there, and then honestly bringing in probably a little bit of conversation about what our brother is experiencing up in Kansas.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's contingency, and then there's way beyond the contingency, right?
Right. So the pictures that are behind me, I'm going to guess that most listeners, most people in the world have at one time or another seen one of the little memes or sketches. There's a black and white version of this where you see your house a certain way, and then the buyer sees it a certain way because they're making an offer, and then the appraiser sees it another way, and then the bank has to do a loan. And the truth is that it's kind of funny, but all that plays into it, right? We've been running into this because I have been working on a condo that I'm going to help sell for an older friend of mine from church. You have been doing construction within your own house. And our brother Dan, who's in Manhattan, Kansas, has had a house. I think he said he bought it November of 22, Eric. I think it's been that long. And I talked to him yesterday and it finally closed.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's had that one for almost 18 months, 19 months at this point.
Right.
No.
Right.
Well, yeah. Anyhow, beyond what would be considered a normal repair renovation time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I want to talk about his a little bit because Dan's not near as chatty as you or I. He's not the person that just hangs out on the phone for a long time. But he was telling me about this experience and he's like, "Oh, you're going to listen to the whole thing." And he goes through the whole process. This was a client. Yeah. I don't know if it was in Manhattan or Junction City or exactly where it was, near Fort Riley, Kansas. So they about 35% of the loans they do in that area are VA. So this was a veteran that was buying it. That means no money down, and typically they don't have a lot of money to put into things. So Dan and his partner had purchased it and flipped it, which took way longer than anticipated, right? And then they got to the point. So I think rough numbers I'm going to share with you all. I think they paid about $150. My brother's got about $50,000 in repairs into it, and then another $20 in carrying costs for keeping the power on, and the money he has to pay on what he borrowed. So he's at about $70,000 into it, and they got an offer. They listed it at $280, and it came in with an appraisal of $260. Now, if you've ever done a VA loan or if you've ever been a VA buyer, there's a program called Tidewater where you can go back and you can try to support the price that you put it at and see if the VA appraiser will adjust it.
Yeah, that's one of those terms that it's like, where did we come up with that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe get it before it goes back out. I don't know.
Yeah. It's crossed my mind before, but then you always get wrapped up in if you're in the transaction and you have it going on, you're worried about the numbers, not what it's called. And then once you've either gone through that and you're moving on, you don't think about, I need to go back and research that. But I'm going to have to put it on my notes for why do they call it a Tidewater? And it only exists really in a VA appraisal status. That
is correct. Yeah, I don't know from an FHA perspective if there's a term, or you can always go back and argue them. So interestingly, now they're at $260, and Dan has got at that point at least $220 into it, right? And his partner, who is the contractor, hasn't been paid to do the work because he's a partner in the profit. So he's done all this remodeling and not been paid. In the interim, they do the appraisal, see the house with the appraisal picture. And there's apparently a shed and a wall. So the appraiser requires a survey. And, you know, it's interesting for me because where we grew up, we allude to Lindsey all the time about how, you know, on Main Street, Dan talked about Chick and Gladys's house being partially on and how we would mow part of Mrs. Weaver's lawn. We didn't know where things were. And then the house on Lynn Street. So it happened a lot where things overlapped from what the original lot line should have been. Anyway, now they have to do a survey. So buyer wants the house, they do a survey. I'm going to say, I think he thought this was $7,000. I haven't had to do surveys, so I don't know, but they had to do a survey, that and the wall, maybe they had to reposition or do something with the wall. Now they go to closing and they get to closing and they were so busy worrying about the survey and the wall that they didn't notice that, I don't know what those windows are called when you have a basement and they're like dug out down below, because we don't have those in Tucson.
Yeah, because we don't have basements, we don't worry about it. But yeah, they have some sort of shaft to allow light into the basement. Right.
So they had to cover it. And they got to closing and they didn't know they had to cover it. So, and I don't know if that means a screen for pets or I don't know what it means. So his partner put the cover on it. And then they got to closing and Wynn turned in the receipt, but not in the name of his contractor license. So on the 28th, a week ago, at 5 p.m., they were not able to close because Wynn had to do a new receipt in his contractor's name.
And this is nothing more than the cover to help keep the moisture and the snow and everything from building up down there.
From building up down by those windows.
Down that shaft that's there next to the window in the basement.
Yeah. And back in Ohio, if you recall, a lot of people would have straw bales around for warmth and stuff, but there were a lot of those windows. And most of the basements weren't finished in farmland, you know, to be years later maybe, but not to begin with, not the old houses. Anyway, all is said and done. They finally closed. The realtors agreed to a reduced commission. And at the end of the day, I think the realtors still made more money than Dan and Wynn did after a year. So the whole point of all of this is it could have been the perfect blend and they could have made $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. But you have to be prepared for the other side of it, right? You know. And how much, when you make an offer on a house that needs work, do you have a 20% give or take wiggle room? Do you do 30? Like what is your number and how experienced are you to be able to accommodate the unknown?
Well, and considering this is the industry we both work in, I think when you did your kitchen renovation, and certainly I know with some of the work renovations and things I had to do on my own house, there is the contingency for things that are going to be a little bit more expensive than what you think, or things that run over. But is there a contingency for the complete unexpected? And what does that number come up to? We had, because of our situation at our house, in the kitchen, in a bathroom that was completely gutted, walls, things along those lines, because we're on a septic system, because we're pier and beam on a septic system, as we disconnected things, we stopped putting as much water down our sewer pipes as we normally do. And that caused us a different problem, totally separate from and had nothing to do with the demolition and the remediation and the restoration that needed to be done physically, new vanity, new sink, reset and toilet, that sort of thing. We ended up having to power spray not once but twice our entire septic lines because there's a gentle enough slope that not everything washes down. It dried up and created a blockage. So here we are, having spent months in renovation, hundreds to thousands of dollars in plumbing work.
Yeah.
And Jeannie goes to flush her toilet, and we ended up backing up in both the sink and the tub.
Oh,
right. It's like, I can't ever use that sink again. Fortunately, we hadn't changed the sink yet. That came later. But it's those kind of things that it's like we knew we were going to have to pay for plumbing. I knew I was going to have to pay a plumber to re-plumb under my sink and make sure everything's connected and re-plumb under the vanity. I was not anticipating that I was going to have plumbers here for hours ripping out additional toilets in order to get to the sewer system, in order to do this, it just seemed like for a while there was a never-ending cascade. From our own personal standpoint, had we not found an active leak under our sink, which was causing some of our mold issues, we wouldn't have gotten anything from our insurance company. Because even though we have mold coverage, and for people watching, I just did air quotes as I paused a little bit there. Insurance companies, homeowners insurance companies, they want to have an incident, something that they can draw that line in the sand. And I use that reference way too frequently being in San Antonio, but they want to have something that they can, this is the defining moment. This is what happened. Was it a lightning strike? Was it a fire? If it's an auto accident, was there an auto thing? Mold doesn't happen that way. Mold takes time. We ultimately, part of what ended up having to be destroyed goes back for us probably close to 7 years.
Wow. To
the last time we had a line break and the walls ripped out, and they sealed them up too fast. Because where we had mold at, there was in a lot of the house, we had nothing active. There was nothing there. It had just been time, temperature variances, up and down, up and down, up and down for years. And that caused our problem. Well, the insurance company is going, not our fault.
Yeah. Eric, when you go to edit this, you're pausing about every 45 seconds. Am I?
Okay. And I think
go ahead.
I think when you're talking, I'm seeing it pause on my side, but since we record on your side, it's going to be me that's going to be paused, and I'm going to have to make the edits on my voice.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put a note. Don't watch this on video. Just listen, and we'll hope that when I go to the office and we use different computer and stuff, that it's a little bit better. So we're gonna have to figure that out.
Now I have to ask the question because you had talked about.
Go ahead.
No, you go first, sister.
I was going to talk about the one I'm working on after you just talked about the wall and the mold. So I am helping with a condo. And I knew that the tile in the bathroom was kind of the 8-inch square put in the 1980s. And when we started doing things in there, we did not intend to do anything in the bathroom. And we ended up having to do both bathrooms, showers, and each tub surround or shower surround had 2 layers of tile, not 1. The floor had 3 layers. 3. So we take up the white tile. There's another one underneath that kind of looked like the linoleum kind of squares that we might have put on in our house in Lindsey back in 81, 82, 83. I don't know. And then there was another one under that. So all of the costs and the tear out costs, not to mention this is an upstairs condo that you cannot access from the back. So we had to pull a dump truck up, put it outside the 2 bathroom windows. And I paid some young people from my office to go over and throw tile out the windows down into the truck. But when we looked at it to do an estimate, you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna paint, we're gonna take out the carpet, easy peasy. No, the tack strips that were put in with nails way more often than you needed for the carpet. So that was more work. I can hardly speak it because every day there was like a new adventure, including when we moved the toilet after the 3 layers of tile, getting to the point where that toilet was not installed properly. More plumbing. The owner doesn't know this. Nobody knows this except the people that installed it incorrectly, right? So just like cha-ching, 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 the dollar signs are going up, going up, going up. And my original estimate that I wrote down, I thought I had between 7 and 10,000. I might get to 12. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be closer to between 18 and 20,000 we're going to have. And we'll get that back. And the owner has enough equity that it will be fine. But just, it's all the unseen, all the stuff you can't see. So.
Yeah, and you were fortunate. If it had gone back even further, then you had the potential that some of those tiles, those first ones on the very bottom, could have been manufactured at a point where they had asbestos in them. And you
That's
could
true.
have add in another layer of complexity because now you have to put up the barricades and PPE equipment and everything else for someone to come take care of that.
Yeah. Yep. Not to mention the HOA is responsible for the exterior, which looks like yuck. And they're voting Monday night if they're going to take care of it. They're supposed to take care of it. They pay to take care of it, but I won't be able to sell it to an FHA or a VA buyer if the HOA doesn't do what they have to do on the outside. So just complications, right, that you don't expect. So.
Yeah. Well, and another one, I've got a client, long-term client of mine, Willard, who had spent a great deal of time now last year working to renovate a rental property that he's had for years. We knew it had foundation problems, and that was one of the first things that had to be taken care of. And I think in our foundation episodes, we've talked about the fact that San Antonio has these areas where the settling occurs and you have to shore up the foundation because of that expanding and contracting soil. That's what we had happen. Well, by the time we lifted the house, then we created all kinds of plumbing problems. And in correcting the plumbing issues, you're now permitting with the city. The city has to come out and inspect. Part of what you're doing and your schedule is based on them showing up when they're supposed to. And if they're really busy and can't get out for several days, you're stuck. You're not doing anything. So there's that protracted time that you have absolutely no control over. You've got plumbers who want to get a job done that need to get on to a next job, but need to get back in order to finish this one up. That it ended up that the plumbing repairs cost $6,000 more than the foundation repairs.
Wow.
Who would have thought that? But I mean, this is at one point when I was over at the house, they had to hand tunnel underneath the foundation. There was no way to dig or do anything like that aside from a small shovel. And they came in from both sides. The house is about 30 feet wide, and they had to go in under the center of the house. The ground that they didn't disturb was probably about 8 feet. So on a 30-foot wide, they came in from both directions to leave an 8-foot strip in the middle in order to get to everything and access it and make the changes they needed to make. So that's another one of those going, you couldn't even figure what.
No, and you saying that, so Derek, who is, I'm pointing like he's down the road working at this condo. He did my backsplash.
He's right there.
Yeah, he's right there. He's right. And he's working on a house in Alabama. Different rules, right? Like the things that you don't even know that you don't know because of states and counties. And by the way, it's the holiday season and nobody's working from like really in the city hall or the county to come out and inspect your water line. And every day it's carrying costs for those that invest. So it's kind of a fascinating world. And after having been in this business now for as long as I have, and you too, you just start seeing the things. Is it still always a great investment to have home ownership? Absolutely. We all know that, right? But sometimes, is it a challenge? Yeah.
If you're there long enough, you've got maintenance. There's going to be things that wear out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not the Great Pyramids that have stood for 2,000 years. We are not the Roman Colosseum or the Parthenon, any of those things that still are out there in structures and wood, composition shingles. I mean, let's face it, plastic PVC pipe.
Yep.
Whatever the case may be, there is wear and tear and usage and a planned life expectancy, which is not 2,000 years.
That is correct. And that makes me think about the last one that I told you about where I may be reselling a house that I just sold in June. And when I walked through it yesterday, the potential buyers talked about all they would do to change it. So I know what we did to change it 3 years ago. I know what the buyers who just bought it earlier this year did to change it. And now the next buyers will change it some more and don't like what was just done 3 months ago. And it's so, which is also that question that we realtors get asked by sellers. Should I do this?
Should I change this? Should I paint this?
Or should I leave it because they're going to come do what they want anyway? And boy, that's a hit or miss question, isn't it? About what we should do.
It is, because I think one time I saw that the estimate is there's the real cost of doing something and there's the buyer's impression of what that cost is going to be.
Right.
They haven't bought anything for years. Maybe it's their first house and they look through and they look at the carpet going, oh, the whole thing needs to be recarpeted. That's going to cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It may not be that much, but it's there. And is it better to have really, really worn out carpet that everybody walks in and looks at and goes, nail polish stains in the girls' room, cat and dog stains, you got da-da-da-da-da-da. Or do you change it just to help market it and sell it?
Yeah. Yeah. Before we do the closing, you mentioned Willard. Does he still own the homes in Toledo that he had? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. You broke up because of our delay and what we've got going on here. Technologically.
Does Willard still own the homes in Toledo?
He still owns Collingwood. Yeah, he has a fourplex on Collingwood Avenue. We were able to connect and sell South Bend, Indiana. So one of the ones that he's had in South Bend, Indiana for years is now gone.
I met a man the other day and we were talking, and his daughter lives in Toledo. And
2016, I think.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so I met this guy and he said, my daughter lives near Hill Avenue.
That's how long ago?
Okay, now we're talking over each other. We just need to end. Okay, never mind. I'm just saying I met somebody else who has a daughter living in Toledo, so it doesn't matter. All right. As we close the episode, we want to thank you all for listening. And I'm going to suggest you really listen and not watch, because you're going to get tired of watching us pause. But we, stroll a little bit down memory lane.
We got to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a little bit more recent. We just briefly touched on Ohio and the homes back there, but a little bit more about life and times and the ownership prospect and the repair costs associated with things. Please keep us in mind as we work to communicate and educate and entertain, and whatever those words are Eric said earlier. If you're in Arizona, and specifically I'm in the Tucson area with Keller Williams Southern Arizona, or if you're in the San Antonio area, Eric is with Keller Williams in Texas, and we are here to help you. I can't even say where you are because San Antonio is so big. So he's in the hill country with all those trees and all those hills and all that stuff. Anyway, we are here to help you find a place to call home and create your own memories, whether those memories are fixing things up and making it your own, or whether you walk into something that's ready to go, like that one behind Eric in the picture. If you're across the United States or around the world, we're both a part of extensive networks, and we can refer and help you find a real estate expert wherever you are. Remember, it may be simple, but it ain't always easy. And until next time, I'm Donna.
I'm Eric.
And we are real
siblings.
Never going to work with the delayed pause. Eric, have fun editing this. And I'm going to go to the office and we're going to try the next one on a different computer. Bye, brother.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah.
I'm Annabelle, and I want to thank you for investing your valuable time in listening to Real Sibling. It Ain't Easy. I hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. There are several ways you can support this podcast with my Grandpa Eric and Aunt Grandma. Please take the time to like, follow, and subscribe. Additionally, leave them a 5-star rating along with a review on your preferred podcast platform. The final thing I would ask is that you recommend this podcast to a friend, a family member, or an associate. Your engagement is critical to their ongoing success, and they look forward to connecting. Check out the show notes Grandpa put together with their contact information, including emails, phone numbers, and website. And remember, the Real Siblings look forward to hearing from you.